Hi, Tom Cole for Steve Taylor's Community Connection, and I always say it's an honor and a privilege, and it is every time you interview someone, but today, very much so for me, because I've known Todd Crandell for, it seems like a lifetime, and I always admired the incredible work that he's done in our community, helping people with drug and alcohol problems. I don't know if there are many things more important than giving hope to kind of, Todd, I hate to say hopeless, because I know you don't believe it's hopeless, but I know so many people they get in those situations, they feel hopeless, and their family feels like they can't help them. Todd Crandell, Racing for Recovery, thanks so much for being with us, and give me your thoughts on it, because I know you don't ever say it's hopeless.
I don't say it's hope. Actually, I have hope tattooed on my wrist.
Okay.
When you're in addiction and when your family is suffering because of a loved one's choice to use drugs and alcohol, yes, everybody is hopeless. Our first job at Racing for Recovery is to give a vision of hope immediately, to show our slogan, with sobriety, anything is possible. So being a former substance abuser myself, I know what it's like to feel hopeless. But as soon as you have hope and you apply action with that hope, your whole life will change. So it's empathy for people who are hopeless, and then it's immediately showing them that there's another side. You take the first part of that word and leave it at hope, and let that permeate into a life of recovery, and it is possible for everybody.
Todd, I admire, obviously your lifelong work with Racing for Recovery is incredible. 3 books, great books you've written, a movie that you've, a documentary about your life. But I admire the courage, because you could have recovered and just gone about your life. You were well known, you were an outstanding athlete, great hockey player. You could have done a myriad of other things. But I admire so much you chose to tell your story. It takes a lot of courage to do that, and maybe you want to give folks a little thumbnail of that, and then you chose to do something about it to help others.
Just surviving a 13-year drug and alcohol addiction was a gift from a higher being than us. And I'm also going to put a gift from my mom, who committed suicide from drugs and alcohol as well. And her brother killed himself from drugs and alcohol, and my aunt also committed suicide. So 3 out of 4 kids in that family committed suicide.
Can I ask you, before you tell the rest of this, such a poignant story, do you believe the hereditary part of that, is there a hereditary gene if people in your family have had a bent toward addiction, that you believe in that?
I do. It's interesting. I just started a suicide prevention and educational group at Racing for Recovery yesterday. And I didn't early on come from a belief of genetically with suicide. I've always believed it genetically with drugs and alcohol.
Okay.
It's interesting because we're talking about a predisposition,
yes,
physically and psychologically. Genetic part with respect to addiction, yes, somebody may be predisposed to it, but it takes a choice to ignite that.
Right.
The suicide aspect of genetics is an interesting thing, because it's not physical, it's psychological. And I've battled suicidal ideation my entire life. 100% now, as a licensed clinician, believe that there is a major genetic proportion to suicide. And yes, as I've said, I 100% agree with the genetics on an addiction standpoint.
Did you have a light switch moment where you got so low that you just said, I can't do this anymore and I want to change? I mean, take me inside that. What was your moment?
There's a couple things I want to talk about with this. Great question. My moment was April 15th of 1993. I got my 3rd drunk driving charge.
Okay.
So a lot of times in recovery, you'll hear these cliche terms like, you got to hit rock bottom.
Right.
It wasn't a rock bottom for me. It was an awakening, and it was the best thing that ever happened to me. I don't believe in, you don't have to have a tragedy to get you to change your life. It can be a beautiful sunny day and you have this awakening that says, I'm done. And for me, it was that 3rd drunk driving charge, and I literally said, that's it. And I've never touched it in over 28 years. Is that a choice on my end? Yes. But where did that choice come from on a spiritual level that I hadn't had it 13 years prior to that?
Right.
Because I had all the horrible stories in 13 years of addiction, but that one day, that was it, and I stopped. And I consider that a gift and an awakening, not a rock bottom. And all I've done with respect to forming Racing for Recovery, this is my life's purpose. I truly believe that surviving my mom's suicide and my own self-destruction with drugs and alcohol gave me an opportunity to fulfill life's purpose, and that was to do what I'm doing today with Racing for Recovery. So when you can take your biggest trauma and turn it into your biggest asset, it's the greatest gift in the world.
Does it settle in with you? And I know you probably don't think this way, but I know the thousands and thousands and thousands of people that you have helped through Racing for Recovery. You've changed their lives. They're now good family people. They're productive citizens in our community. They work. They're good folks. They're raising good kids. You've changed all these paradigms of all these people through Racing for Recovery. What does that mean to you? I mean, that's gotta, I couldn't imagine what it would mean to change lives like that.
You know, it's an interesting question, and the foundation of my life and everything that Racing for Recovery stands for is empathy, humility, and gratitude. I don't perceive myself as someone that's changing someone's life. I'm like,
right.
I'm not good enough for that. But I will say this, it's an honor and a privilege to simply be a part of someone's effort to improve their own lives. What's devastating for me is to watch people, and I'm sure you can relate to this as being a coach and a teacher, when you teach and give kids all the proper ways to pass the test,
right,
and they don't do it, you
right,
feel that.
Yeah.
And I'm that same way when I know people can never use drugs and alcohol again, and we show them what a good life it is to
Yeah.
be sober, and they make an unfortunate choice to do it again, it's devastating. I take it personally. I try to improve with it professionally, but on the other side of that, to watch a family heal is truly, it's amazing. It's awesome. It's humbling just to be a part of it. To think that one single choice that I made to quit using drugs over 28 years ago has led to a global impact with Racing for Recovery.
Worldwide.
Worldwide, and that's because of the people I've surrounded myself with.
Right.
I have a great, I don't want to call them staff, just like Steve does. We have people who are a part of this, who are smarter than me, and I'm just smart enough to understand I need to put these people in place and have them do their thing.
It's interesting to me as CEO, and Steve being the CEO at Taylor, I think you have a similar philosophy. I know I'm not talking out of school with Steve. I think he'd be the first person to say it. He has your philosophy. He hires good people.
Yes.
If you're, you don't. Woody Hayes a long time ago wrote a book. You win with good people. If you don't have good people, I don't care what the talent level is. If they're not solid, fundamentally decent people wanting to do good things, you will fail. And I think you guys have a very shared philosophy. It really, I think hero's thrown around way too much today. But Todd, you've always been a hero to me. What you've done in the community, what you mean to all the folks, and I know you don't like to take credit for it, but you've changed so many lives, and you help so many people that are in desperate need of help. And I'm gonna turn the second half over to the boss, and he's gonna take care of you.
All right. Thanks for having me, Tom.
Hey everybody, Steve Taylor here with Steve Taylor's Community Star. Obviously here with Todd Crandell, who needs no introduction, as Tom says, well known in Northwest Ohio. You've done such a great job helping people in our community. I want to sort of piggyback off some of the things Tom talked a little bit, but I want to be able to share with the folks more about Racing for Recovery, how you started it, what all you do, how people can get a hold of you guys too. So let's talk a little bit about that.
Well, Racing for Recovery was a program that I started in 2001, so over 2 decades of service now, I'm proud to say that. And I wanted to provide a different avenue for not only people that were battling addiction, but we were the first program to combine both families and people battling addiction into one format. So we were the first ones ever to do that because I knew myself that yes, I could relate to someone else who was using drugs, but I had no idea the tragedies and the devastation I was causing my family and friends. So our support group meetings were designed to have families come in and just basically say, this is how your choice affected our family. And as someone who was using drugs, I need to hear that, to have empathy for what my choices were doing. So that was the thing we started with, was support group meetings. But over the past 20 years, we've incorporated assessments, counseling, individual counseling, family counseling, educational groups, yoga sessions, nutritional groups, exercise groups, So we have a staff of 18 licensed clinicians, very educated in the field of drug and alcohol addiction, who are here to just provide awesome service.
That's great. That's great. And tell us how the Ironman fits into all this, because I was reading a little bit. Was it 89, 90 some Ironmans you participated in?
I'm doing my 88th Ironman this Sunday, so I've done a couple of them. But it's interesting how this started. My stepmom, I don't like referring to her that, but my second mom, she was an avid marathoner when I was a kid. So I'd watch her run, and she'd get a trophy every weekend, bring it home. And that was an inspiration to me, but I recall vaguely watching the Ironman Hawaii. And I had a lot of drugs in front of me at the time. I was drinking a lot and in kind of a fog, but watching that on television. And I said to a friend of mine, I'm like, I'm gonna do that someday. And he kind of looked at me like, really? Look at you.
Right.
But that was the first seed that was planted. And, you know, I got into Ironman in, when was the first one I did? 1998, I think, something like that. But anyway, I've gone on to finish Ironman Hawaii 3 times. So to do that extraordinary event, knowing where I first saw it, has just been another example of look what you can do when you're off the drugs. So Ironman has been a way for me to see the world, meet a lot of great people, take my kids to some different parts of this awesome universe we're into, and then deliver the Racing for Recovery message.
What a great story. Now, some folks might not be familiar with what the Ironman entails. I mean, you're swimming, you're biking, you're running.
It's a small event. You swim 2.4 miles, then you bike 112 miles, and then you run 26.2 miles.
Just all in a day's work.
All in
right?
a day's work.
Yeah.
The funniest question I get from people, they'll say, well, how many days do you get to do that? And I'm like, well, there's a 17-hour cutoff, so you got to finish it within that.
Yeah.
But it's a great challenge.
Have you considered at all any ultra marathons? I've read David Goggins' book, Can't Hurt Me, and it's an unbelievable story of perseverance and discipline, and he got into these ultra marathons. And is that something that you might take a look at?
I've done 2 Ultramans.
Okay.
So this is a 3-day event where on day 1 you swim 6.2 miles, and then you bike 90 miles. That's day 1. Day 2 you ride 170 miles. And then day 3, you get up and run 52 miles. So I've done that twice, and that's enough for me.
You've had enough of that.
I've had enough. I don't need that anymore.
So I know also, though, you do a great job of going out and speaking to students and athletes and just businesses, organizations all around, you said all around the world, really.
Yeah.
And obviously you've got a great message to share, but I'm sure, like Tom said, you've changed lives. You've helped folks all over the world. Do you have any stories? I always love asking our guests that come in of maybe a particular story that sticks out of someone that you had a conversation with or somebody that you connected with maybe in one of those talks that you said, you know, this just, wow, it felt good. It was one of those things that said, you know what, everything I'm doing, it's all because of this.
Well, I'll give you an example. I received an email from a gentleman. He just wrote me and said, I need help. I'm in New Jersey. And immediately I responded to him. And it turns out this guy was out contemplating suicide and was listening to one of my podcasts. And he said, as a last ditch effort, I'm gonna contact this guy and see if he'd even respond to me. And he sent me that email, I responded. This was back in, like 2005 or something like that. And since then, we connected. I flew out to meet him. We did some work together. He's been sober now for over a decade, finished an Ironman himself, successful businessman, married, 2 kids. That is a remarkable story on the work that he did. On the other side, I've done a lot of talks at schools, and I've had people that have come into Racing for Recovery as adults, and they'll say to me, oh yeah, you came to my high school, and I'm like, well, didn't you listen to me? But on a serious note then, they're like, I heard you, I just didn't act on it, and now I'm ready to act on what you said. And there's quite a few examples of stuff like that. And as long as someone can learn from anything that I've said, or I can be an example of what not to do and what you can do, and they benefit from it, then my life's purpose is being fulfilled.
Well, it definitely is.
Yeah.
You know, something you've said, and I read also on your website and your bio, you talk about the road to recovery, you talk about the hard work.
Yep.
And you talk about, and I think that's something that maybe people don't really think about. And Tom said earlier, it's not like you're just picking up the phone and this is going to be a quick fix. There's work involved. And, I think you've done a fantastic job showing people the way and helping these people. Your staff obviously is doing a great job in Northwest Ohio. There are folks that are probably watching this that maybe know somebody, maybe someone that's watching it needs some help. How can they get a hold of you guys, and what's the step that they take to go through the process?
It is that simple to make that first phone call. Just call us. But I look at yourself, I look at your staff. I've known Tom for years. Anybody who has, I don't like using the term successful a lot, finding their life's purpose. That wasn't just given to them. I mean, you've worked tirelessly to be the person that you are today, and you're giving it back with your awesome staff here. I think a lot of people look at me at times and they see the things I've been fortunate enough to do, which is true, but they're not equating what did it take to get to do the things I do. I've been sober a long time, and I've put daily work into achieving the things that I've done, in addition to having awesome support along the way. So it is consistent work. One of our coworkers, Eric Donati, has a great saying, the rent is due every day. And I love that. I live by that. It's not what you did yesterday. It's what you did today and what you're going to do tomorrow. And that's applicable in anybody that wants to achieve anything in their life. But it starts with making that first phone call to Racing for Recovery. I want people, when they're reaching out for help, I want that help to be from an educated, licensed, credentialed resource. There's one thing to just have survived a drug addiction, good, but if you want to be in this field on a clinical level, you have to have the licensure and the education to back up what all the drug addiction did for you.
Sure.
And that takes a lot of work, a lot of effort, but the rewards are great.
I'm sure, like you said, there's people out there that could use some help, so reach out to Todd and his staff, Racing for Recovery. We'll make sure to put all the information on screen too, but we appreciate you having in studio today. It's been an honor to talk to you and to hear more of your story. We could sit for hours just listening to this, and maybe we'll have you come in and talk to our staff one day.
I'd love it.
It'd be something great. I know our people get a lot out of it.
I'd love it. Thanks for having me,
Thank you
Steve.
for all you do in our community. Thanks for tuning in to another edition of Steve Taylor's Community Star. We'll see you next time.